and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Okay, I'm told to let my hair grow a little bit longer because then we're going to do something wonderful with it. But it's like getting down in my mouth. So, I don't know. When I do this, it's just that I feel like I'm eating it. In today's gospel reading, and as I was thinking about this, I thought, we all want to be the Samaritan. We all want to claim, well, we're the Samaritans, aren't we good? Yeah. But you know, the reality in all of Jesus' stories is we are all of the characters. You and I are the self-righteous lawyer that think we've done pretty good for ourselves, that we've done pretty good for God. And we just would like God to give us a little attaboy and a little, everything's great, you're doing good. Stay on the right path. You're on the right path. But there's a little phrase there. It says, just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. And you and I, just like that lawyer, our purpose too often in our prayers, in our works, is to test Jesus. I've been doing pretty good, God. How are you doing? How are you doing for me, God? I've been following the straight and narrow. Now, have you noticed? Are you keeping track here? Mm-hmm. Let's just check this out, Jesus. Make sure you're noticing and paying attention. And so Jesus says to the lawyer, well, what's written in the law? What are you supposed to do? And of course, the lawyer immediately knows the answer, as does every good, faithful Christian, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. Well, this morning I think of the fact that there are literally hundreds of thousands of Christians worshiping God today that don't understand who their neighbor is. Love your neighbor as yourself. How we treat the least among us, how we treat the person we declare in our own minds to be the most expendable, that's how we're treating God. I don't need to explain today the message for all of us in the United States of America, do I? No. We know how we're treating the least among us.
That's true.
The children who have been taken from homes filled with murder and gangs and chaos that we've helped create through our own diplomatic policies, seeking asylum only to be torn away from their parents, and they and their parents in separate facilities, placed in situations that no human being should ever be in, no matter who or what they are or what they've done. And you and I, through our wonderful government, are guilty. And the only question in today's gospel is, which of these three people are we going to be? And we've been every single one. Because the priest, we need to remember, there was a good reason he had for walking on the other side. He was on his way to the temple to do his work. But in order to do his work, he had to preserve his cleanliness. And for him to have gone to this man would have meant that he had abandoned that cleanliness, that he then had made himself unable to do his job. And so he didn't necessarily pass on the other side because he was afraid of this person laying in the ditch. He didn't necessarily pass on the other side because he was afraid of the person. He did it because he felt he had an important task that he had to fulfill. And in order to fulfill that task, he had to preserve his cleanliness. Then we're told about the Levite, who also passes by on the other side. And I didn't do my studies enough to remember why the Levite did, but he had his reason also. And then the most important thing is a Samaritan comes by. And you and I need to remember our history. The Samaritans were those who were the lowest of the low, beneath all respect among the Jewish people. The people of Samaria, while worshiping God, worshiped differently than the other Israelites, and therefore were considered to be abhorrent and the lowliest of the lowly. And yet this is the person who reaches out. This is the person who provides protection. This is the person who not only goes out of the way physically in caring for the man, but takes him to an inn, a motel, hotel, pays for his upkeep, tells the innkeeper to help the guy in every way he needs, and that when he comes back, he'll pay up if he needs more money. Today, in some dozen cities of the United States, there are going to be raids in our name on some people who have lived here for 20 or 30 years, paying taxes, being decent, contributing members of society, but they came from a different country. Just like every single one of us sitting here came from a different country. But they didn't quite fulfill all the paperwork. And so even though they've been citizens, raised families here, contributed to society, we, through our government, have decided it would be a good idea to cast our net out and see if we can't catch some of them and send them to a land they have not known for 20, 30, 40 years. You know, I read the news, not too much because it's too upsetting. But the thing I know, and I know from today's gospel, is we cannot simply say, someday, hopefully it'll all pass. Someday, it's not really as bad as they're saying. We need to remember that you and I may be the one called by Jesus to stand up on behalf of our neighbor, who may be someone living next door to us, or 2 doors down, or maybe some poor child who's in some camp, so that some rich American can make even more money. Our Old Testament lesson, Amos, who doesn't want to be a prophet, gets himself in trouble because he prophesies that Israel is going to, through Jeroboam, have a downfall. Because Israel presumed it was the promised nation, the promised land, that it had a special relationship with God, that it was the city on a hill, shining example, and that God would do nothing to it, no matter how it behaved. I think that in the story of Amos, from today's gospel, we may see a foreshadowing and a foretelling of what will happen to us in this promised nation, in this city standing on the mountain, if we fail to reach out. Amen. Amen.